It was a weekday morning, autumn. I was 22 years old. I'm just wondering if we turned down the mic just a tiny, tiny bit. Thanks so much, Derek. I was 22 years old, enjoying life as an independent young woman living on my own. I'd recently landed my first job after university, and going to work each morning was a joy. Wakened as usual by the alarm on my digital clock radio, I rose with energy that day. I got dressed in my professional office clothes, I ate a bowl of cereal, and I headed out, locking the door on my cute little bachelor apartment on Dovercourt Road. As I walked toward the streetcar stop, I realized I'd accidentally left my watch at home. Meanwhile, it was slowly dawning on me that the dawn was strangely slow in coming. The street seemed darker than usual, and it was a bit chillier too. Still, I was focused on my workday ahead in the advertising department of Eaton's, the department store that was still going strong at the time. My horizon mustering up my unbelievably, I had measured the clock incorrectly, and then said, "You might be going in the right direction, but you're going at the wrong time." The examined life often leads us to discover when our personal journeys have gone wrong. Sometimes we realize right away, and other times it takes time to realize. Looking back at a still embarrassing event, I see that it's every bit as good a metaphor as it is a funny story. Indeed, as you examine your own lives, I hope you also recall events that fall into the great tradition of journey tales. Humans love to describe our lives as journeys. We often ask ourselves, where are we going? And we try to set the best course. Yet, as my story reveals, so often we're simply making decisions moment by moment based on our own unique perspectives and circumstances. And we're often in the dark, even if we don't realize it at the time. But that's no reason for despair. When we approach life's journey with compassion and curiosity, we can find opportunities for growth and for service, even if we don't end up where we think we will or when. The spiritual writer and Catholic priest Henry Nouwen was someone who continually examined his life. As a result, he often asked himself if he was headed in the right direction. At one point in his life, after becoming a successful author and holding a tenured position at Yale, he even tried out life in a monastery for a couple of extended periods. But after all of those experiences, he felt that he was called to work with the poor. And so he traveled to Latin America to do that, only to find that he was not well suited to that work. He found he had to change direction once again. After several years and much prayer and soul searching, he arrived at the L'Arche community for adults with intellectual disabilities founded by the Canadian Jean Vanier. It was at L'Arche Daybreak, north of Toronto, that at last Nouwen found himself at home. About the human journey, Nouwen wrote, "One of the most radical demands for you and me is the discovery of our lives as a series of movements or passages. When we're born, we leave our mother's womb for the larger, brighter world of the family. It changes everything, and there's no going back. When we go to school, we leave our homes and families and move to a larger community of people where our lives are forever larger and more expansive. Some of us may have children, and when they leave us for more space and freedom, our lives may seem less meaningful. It all keeps changing. When we grow older, we retire or lose our jobs, and everything shifts again. It seems as though we are always passing from one phase to the next, gaining and losing someone, some place, something. The losses remind you constantly that all isn't perfect and that it doesn't always happen for you the way you expected. You can choose to live your losses as passages to anger, blame, hatred, or resentment, or you can choose to let these losses be a passage to something new, something wider and deeper. The question is not how to avoid loss and to make it not happen, but instead how to choose it as a passage, as an exodus to greater life and freedom. I don't know about you, but when I've asked myself, where am I going at different points in my life, I've often been focused on the upward and outward, the achievement of new goals. But seeing life instead as a series of passages or gateways to wisdom and understanding changes the picture for me. I start to see life not so much traveling as traveling towards some desired destination, but instead as a creative process of opening more and more to life and to love. As Henry Nouwen suggests, in such a process, the losses and the mistakes I make, the wrong turns, might be just as important as the goals I may achieve. As I struggle to understand sometimes, growing in the spiritual life is not about onward and upward, but about inward and downward. Whatever path we take in life will encounter challenges we could not avoid, indeed, many challenges of our own making. Our task is to find a way to respond to those circumstances with the kindness and grace that allows us to care for others and the world wherever we find ourselves. Wherever that may be, we can discover ways to give of ourselves and to assist others in their journeys. That's certainly true this morning, as we have the opportunity to support not only this congregation, but also children in Ghana made vulnerable by HIV/AIDS, as we support the work of the Unitarian Universalist Office of the United Nations. In Africa, more than 14 million children have lost one or more parents to AIDS. 14 million children. The Every Child is Our Child program provides many of them with school supplies and access to health care, allowing us to expand our horizons of what it means to be a congregation that connects and serves. Support of the UUUNO has been part of First Unitarian's journey for many years, and our work with the United Nations is aligned with the Unitarian sixth principle, the goal of world community, with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Our paths are intertwined with each other's, and there are opportunities for growth at every point along the way. We know this to be true, and yet that knowledge doesn't stop us from setting out on personal quests of so many kinds. As human beings, we set goals, we set priorities, and we are very good at it, and thank goodness for that. Like Dorothy Gale singing Over the Rainbow, we set out upon our paths, intent on finding some wizard who might grant us our heart's desire. That might take the form of a teacher, it might take the form of a cause. We are willing to travel far and wide through frightening gales of many kinds, only to find, if we are lucky and awake, that what we've been seeking is as close as our own backyard, and that we've been safe at home all along. This message is at the heart of all wisdom stories. No matter how far we may travel, no matter how lost we may seem, we are always at home, in the present moment, in the love of God, in the web of life. In the poem we heard earlier, John O'Donohue wrote, "May you travel in an awakened way, gathered wisely into your inner ground, that you may not waste the invitations that wait along the way to transform you." I've always read his poem for the traveler as a blessing for a physical journey, but of course, it can be seen as a blessing for an inner journey as well. As we move through life, we hope to stay aware of the signs that point us toward the best choices we can make at the time. But as I learned on that pre-dawn morning decades ago, it's only too easy to be so fixed on our destination that we completely lose our way. I was oblivious to the dark that morning, and there are many ways I can stay unaware today, as I stay doggedly focused on whatever I currently see as my heart's desire. Fortunately, with a shift in perspective that can come from reflection, prayer, a conversation with a good friend, or simply the passage of time, our priorities can change dramatically. Suddenly, we might see a path that is better suited to us, a timetable that makes more sense, or a companion we might need for the journey. We might see the need to let go of some agenda, or to pause for a while, as I did that morning. With not really enough time to go back to bed, I believe I made myself another cup of coffee and watched the sun come up, all while shaking my head in wonder at how unaware I had been. So where are we headed now? Some of us may be simply putting one foot in front of the other during a difficult passage. Some may find that our journeys are so intertwined with those of others, such as our family members, that it's impossible to ask, "Where am I going?" without asking, "Where are we going?" Some today may be called by urgent goals of social need or now climate justice. Indeed, one of Sean's and my colleagues in ministry wrote to us this week to say that the recent report of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is now calling his personal goals into question, calling him to revise some personal maps. Finding now that we are in a darker time than we may have realized, many of us may be feeling deeply disoriented or frightened. We may be wondering what to do next, what path to take. This is simply where we are, as new awareness is coming to light, and it is not an easy place to be. But if we approach this journey with an open heart, acknowledging everything we feel, including the darker emotions as well as the lighter ones, we can become more and more present to the world and to our fellow travelers during what is, without question, a difficult passage. To paraphrase another reflection of Henry Nouwen, the question of where to live and what to do is really insignificant compared to the question of how to keep the eyes of my heart focused on love. And I believe that when those eyes are open, we will see the best opportunities for each of us to serve in the urgent ways that are needed now. At the end of our service, we will sing a rousing gospel hymn, "Come and Go With Me to That Land." What exactly is that land? I believe it is a wider world of peace and justice. I also believe it is a loving and justice-making peace in the heart. Call it enlightenment, call it freedom, even call it heaven if you want. This is the hope to which we are bound, to which we are headed in our personal forward-looking directions, and to which we are inextricably bound as human beings who are part of an evolving and ever co-creating, ever-changing wholeness. Knowing that we are bound to this whole, breathing in the awareness that we are part of something more. We may embark on our personal journeys with greater peace and assurance. We may travel more easily with others, more at ease with ourselves, even when we endure losses and challenges along the journey. It's possible that we may even find joy and laughter along our paths. I certainly hope we will, even or especially at times when we realize we've lost our way and that we need to start again at the beginning. In the words of Dorothy Gale, if we ever go looking for our heart's desire again, we need not look any further than our own backyard. And so may our hearts be open today to the love all around us and the love deep within us, everywhere we may go. Amen.
If we want hope to survive in this world today, then every day we have to pray on, pray on. If we want hope to survive in this world today, then every day we have to pray on.
If we want hope to survive in this world today, then every